What's going on, everyone? This is Harry Cecil with Hear Us, Hear Them, and I'm here with my friend, my brother, Robert T. Gibson, fellow Missourian by way of Texas. And so we're going to go ahead and get started. We want to talk about his piece that we're doing for our spring concert, which is We Shall Overcome. But specifically, Rob, let's start first off by everyone kind of getting to know who we are together. So this is how I remember the story. You tell me if I'm wrong. So Missouri State University, your graduate program, was this about 2016, 2017? When was it?
I started there in 15.
Okay, so maybe this was, do you remember the MMEA conference? Was that 2016?
That was, my first one was 16. The one I did with the multicultural was 2019.
Right. All right. So 2016, January 2016, I'm looking at Missouri State performing, sounding great, Cameron LaBar. And I'm like, who is this random black man that I don't know? And so he's up there studying with the choir. And I'm like, who is this dude? So I made it a point by the end of the conference to just introduce myself. And we've been straight ever since. So yeah, that's the plan. So Robert Gibson, how did you start writing? How long you been writing? And what do you do now?
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you again, soon to be Dr. Cecil, for having me on. And nice to work with you. Nice to see you, Jamie. So a little bit about me. I'm from Texas, as I said. I have been arranging and doing stuff all of my life. I never knew that was a real passion of mine. So I'm this old. I'm gonna go Facebook. I'm this old. There was, you used to have like those tape recorders where you were like record your voice. And I remember I would record my voice and then I get another one and then like dub my voice. So I had 2-part and then I go back and redub my voice. So I had all these arrangements of stuff like when I was like 10, 11, 12, and I didn't know it was a passion for writing until probably when I got to Missouri State and knowing like it's time for me to get all of these things that's in me. It's time to get out. So I started a group called the Multicultural Ensemble at Missouri State. But before I started that group, it was a project group. It was a group that was just to kind of get all of my ideas out, kind of rewrite, take them to somebody. And so I did a full concert right before I graduated at Missouri State with just a group of singers. And we got a chance to do, all of my stuff. That concert, Susan LaBar, who's my editor, she came up to me and she said, "Hey, I really want to publish your Amazing Grace and your This Light of Mine."
And sorry, let me just interject. So Susan LaBar, a publisher and music editor for Walton Music, right? Who's also great composer as well. All right, go ahead.
Yes. And so she said, "I want to, publish your Amazing Grace and This Light of Mine." Now, I never did the concert to get all of that out. I was just doing something just for time to keep myself busy, and from that I got those 2 published. And I'm a huge fan of Rollo Dilworth. That is like my idol when it comes to writing and just his professionalism. And what Susan told me was when the board saw those 2 pieces, they said it reminded them of Rollo Dilworth. Now to me, that's like the biggest compliment I can ever have, because I'm just in love with what he does, and so from then on, that's when stuff began to start transpiring for me. So those 2 pieces came first, and then We Shall Overcome actually came next. And I did that at the same concert. But then that piece got picked up, and that piece has just gone crazy far, especially with the Aeolians, So
right, Aeolians laid that down.
Oh yeah. Man, like Jason Max Ferdinand called me, Dr. Ferdinand called me and said that he was going to do it for a virtual. And so I knew it was going to sound amazing. I just had no idea it was going to go as, oh man, I can't even talk about it,
Mm-hmm.
And from then on, I also just got signed with Alfred Music, and so I did Lovely Day with them, and so I'm thankful that people want to hear what I have, and people want to sing stuff that I've composed. It's a really cool thing to think about,
Yeah, keynote.
Yeah, man.
All right, so let's talk about it then. So We Shall Overcome. So a bit of background. So We Shall Overcome is considered unofficially or officially, depending on who you talk to, of the civil rights movement, considered an anthem, so to speak. The origins of it is folk in nature. It was kind of published by Charles A. Tinley in a version of it early back in like the early 1900s, and then it's passed from one church to another church, from one social justice movement to another. A lot of people don't know that it was used for protests of unionized workers in 1940s, blah, blah, blah. So Rob, what brought you to it And then what made you think it still had something to say in the 2000s?
Sure. I'm gonna back up just a little bit. So a lot of times when I write a piece, it's something that I like the melody or I like the message, So for example, This Light of Mine, the reason why I wrote that piece was because I love the tune This Light of Mine. We sung it in church all the time. So growing up in church, I want to write stuff that are things that I know and know really well, And so We Shall Overcome, we've sung it in church and we've done it before. I can't tell you like I'm gonna write this piece because it's needed. I think I was just writing it because the main purpose of it was because we were doing the Martin Luther King celebration, and I wanted a new piece. I just wanted something, and I remember that piece sat with me for some months, maybe some years, and I just couldn't make it work the way it needed to. And all of a sudden, for that the premiere, which was in January of 2017, was when it kind of came to life, And I think even today, I'm still not really understanding how profound that piece has spread, because it's turned from a piece just about Black people and the tribulation of Black people to the triumph and the tribulation of all mankind. That's a huge thing, because when the pandemic hit, it doesn't see color. When the pandemic hit, it didn't see only Black people. When the pandemic hit and when things happen, it doesn't see certain people. It took out a lot of people. And so in the video, if you watch that video, it's not just showing the struggle of Black people, but it's showing Asians, it's showing different countries. We were all needing hope and restoration, and that's kind of what that song has done. And I don't think I really realized the impact that it had, so praise to God that's what was happening.
That's what I was about. That was gonna be my next question. Like, did you see it being what it is now? I can tell you what it was for me. Like when you steered me towards it, when I was like, hey, Rob, just the origin, the first time I performed this piece, it was 2018, and was the 50th anniversary of Martin Luther King's death. And I was talking to you, and I was just like, hey, so what are you writing? Is there anything that I might be able to use for my choir? The choir I was with before I came back here to school, CCM. And he was like, well, I check out this link. And you sent me the link, and I called you back immediately. Do you remember? I did. And I might have said the first word.
You said, bro.
I couldn't hold back because it was so on time. It was perfect. It was brilliant already, because it's We Shall Overcome, which is synonymous with the Civil Rights Movement, which is to say it's also synonymous with Dr. King and his marches. So that was already appropriate. But then the way you wrote it, that had this awesome blend of contemporary gospel, but still in this very choral tradition that it could be performed with the microphone without. And it just had this thing that anyone can do. And you wrote in the styling in a way that you don't have to teach the Blackness, so to speak. And I put that in quotes, right? Like, it's just, if you do what's on the paper, you're going to be good. And so I just thought it was such a brilliantly arranged work. So that was me in 2018. And then I want to say I was one of the first few ensembles outside of your group that performed it, right?
Yeah, I think
way back in 2018.
Yeah, I think before pandemic hit, like a lot of people didn't know about it. One, because it had just gotten published, through Walton. So like it was kind of moving, but a little bit. But who really took it over by storm was the Aeolians again.
Right,
they really pushed. And all of a sudden now I'm looking on YouTube and choirs all over. Are doing that, and it's because of the influence, And like you said, I'm thankful for my writing style. I took a writing class at Missouri State, and one of my favorite parts of the piece is like the women against the men, like the We Shall Live in piece, that part, and then the key change, because one of the things we learned in that class was how to key change appropriately, and that was one of the things that I was like, I want to make this really profound. And so hearing choir sing it, and it just kind of goes from that E flat major, all of a sudden it's like, what's going on? Like really, really powerful. And I think what made it more powerful is when I heard the Aeolian sing it, and just how Dr. Ferdinand just stretches tempos and slows tempos and dynamics. And it just made it something way more like, did I write that? You know,
Ah,
I mean, he just made
yeah.
it so heartfelt, you know, and so and I'm thankful that people can hear the influence of classical, because I started doing classical music when I was in middle school. Gospel has always been my life, so you hear a lot of that, especially on the "We Shall." That's church.
Yeah,
That's church,
facts.
you know. And then the background voices against the solo is pure, like, just part writing, you know,
Hmm.
things that I learned in college, you know. So it's a
Yeah,
lot of the influences that I had throughout my life. So I'm proud of that piece. I'm really proud, you know.
yeah,
And yeah, I love what people have done with it, and I'm glad that people are not just singing it because it's another Black piece, but
mm,
I'm thankful that people, and I'm hoping that people are singing it because it's a piece that is healing, you know,
yeah.
those who sing it. I think that's more important.
Right. What I find interesting about the piece, in a kind of a sad reality, is of how relevant it still is. Like that,
Mm.
it's bothersome when you think of it that way, right? So if you think of civil rights movement, 1960s anthem, here we are, and I'm getting CNN notifications about a Mr. Wright that just got shot because the police officer thought it was a taser, or the military lieutenant who got, like, again, just, well, that happened way back in December, but that we just now finding out about a dude getting pepper sprayed, and he a military officer, and y'all tell us to respect the military. I'm so confused.
Right.
Like, so it's all this stuff that's continuously happening, and that's particular to Black people. But like you said, it's a struggle message for all parties, right? So I'm thinking
Right.
Asian hate. I'm thinking of the
Right.
Latinx struggle, all these things. So talk to me about what you think of its relevance in 2021.
Sure. I'm gonna say two things. One, I think my favorite word, or the word that is very relevant, is the word someday, because I think people hear the words "we shall overcome" as if we have overcame, and the song is not saying we made it, y'all. The song is saying someday, and
Mm-hmm.
someday is a responsibility that we have, that if we're gonna make it over, whatever we're gonna make it over, we have to all be together, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that is the big significance for me, you know. And even I caught this when I listened to it from another group. You know, the piece starts off with the three parts and really soft, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and then it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And I remember somebody told me, like, why don't you end it on a really big chord? We shall overcome someday. And I said, you know why? Because we haven't got there yet. And I had
Facts.
this image of, like, Martin Luther King, you know, he had a dream, right? And it's
Mm-hmm.
like he had the dream, and one day all this is gonna happen, and it's bigger, it's a really, really big dream, and then he wakes up and it's like, but it ain't here yet.
Mm.
You know. And so, like, when we had that really big chord, to overcome someday, and the choir goes back, it starts, it's like we started all the way over.
Yeah.
And it's like, hmm. And when I thought of that, that really made me go, wow.
Yeah.
You
It's
know, and
sobering.
it's such a profound moment, but it's literally mimicking the very beginning, you
Yeah.
know. There's still some of the same issues. They have just readdressed themselves. They've just redressed themselves in certain positions, you know. Not everybody, you know, is on the same page, but there's still people who are, you know, doing stuff in a different way. So you may not say certain things to my face, but you still do stuff undermining, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is
You
what we
still
go.
very much call me N-word, even though you
Yeah, and
didn't.
you may not
Yeah,
use
you
the word,
did.
but you do it on in a different way,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And when I say that it is, you know, that piece has spoken to everybody, I more so refer to, like, people who have sung it regardless of your culture, you know.
Mm-hmm.
As a Black man, you know, that piece will forever and always be something that I hold dear and near to my heart, because it is talking
Mm-hmm.
about the struggle that we've come through. You know,
Right.
that song was a song that they sang at protest. You know,
Right.
and protest, they had not, you know, these are songs that before stuff would happen, before the hosings, before the dogs got, you know what I'm saying? Like, these were triumphant songs that they sung, even though they know, or they knew that it wasn't there yet. You know, it was a
Right.
hope song, you know.
Right.
And so I'm hoping that this hope song continues to sing over us, and we continue to be led in the right direction, you know.
Okay.
But I think it's important to know, like, we still have work to do. You can't just
Right.
sing and it don't go away. We have work to do as a
Right.
people, you know.
Right. So all right. So talk to me about agency. You and me, we talk all the time about how important it is for us to be represented and to make the calls, to make the decisions about our music and be gatekeepers for the culture of our music. However, again, We Shall Overcome traditionally connected to Black civil rights. How would you see it? How comfortable are you? Is it cool? Do you love it that the music is widespread? And you might have even seen a gang of YouTubes where it was an all-white choir with an all-white conductor. Like, how do you feel about that for this piece? And then talk to me more globally about how you feel about American choral music being presented not always by Black leaders. Not always. I'm trying to be kind. Almost all the time, not by us. So talk to me about that as a composer.
Sure. Let me start with your first thing. So the group that I had, the multicultural group, before we even did it as a thing, majority of the group was white. You know, the only group that I've seen which is all Black was the Aeolian. You know,
right.
And even Harry, when you did it, it was an all-white choir.
It was just me. Yeah, it was just me.
You were the representation. You know,
in a white rural Missouri all-white choir.
Right.
So take that with you.
I take this approach. I take this approach of I am the writer of the piece. I am the arranger of the piece. But I think that it's important that people still get to experience it regardless of your color. I still think it's important that people need to experience it regardless of, you know, who you are, you know, because I think that music, there's a healing in the music, as I said before. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think that only a Black choir should sing it. I think that everyone should sing it. I think you have to understand why you're singing it. If you are singing it because you're looking for a Black composer piece and you're looking for a good closer, I don't think that's the right piece for you. I think it has to be a piece that is not only sung, but there are multiple conversations that have been had. There are multiple things that we're talking about. You know, it's a talk piece. So we sing, we talk about hope, we feel all this stuff, and it can't just be something we put away and we never talk about again. It needs to be something that's continual, you know? Yeah. I think that is really important because you can sing this piece and sing all the notes and pitches right, but if it's not in your heart, then what are you really doing? You're just singing the piece because it's a good piece. Cool. I mean, I'm grateful for that. I would rather much more you sing the piece and have an understanding of why you're singing it, of what it's doing to you, you know, or what it's doing to somebody else who does not look like you, you know? And so if you are a white male or white female or a white conductor or Asian conductor, you know, or whatever, like you are singing this piece and it's bringing about healing, it's bringing about conversations, it's bringing about understanding the Black struggle more. Maybe it's going to bring about, you know, research, you know, about the civil rights movement. You know, why were they out singing this song? Why were they protesting? What's that about? You know, so I'm hoping that it becomes a conversational piece and not just a piece where you just sing it and then you're done with it. You know, because I think that takes away the relevance. Would you mind stating your second question again? Because I want to make sure.
I love you. I love your cap. So it was evergreen. So it was really it was more of is that how you feel about? Let's move it away from your compositions. Let's talk about in general, because you and me, we are both Black conductors, Black teachers, in a white European soundscape, right? So even if we had this whole goal of decolonizing music, we're still going to most likely be programming a gang of European repertoire, right? Or at least European-centered repertoire. So in that same logic, though, how much responsibility do you think we take in protecting the compositions of a Dawson, of Gibbs, of not Debt, because his was a different get down, but of Rosephine Powell's spiritual like pieces, or Dean Smith Moore, or like what type of responsibilities do you think we have, and what do you think the contemporary choral world should be doing when we're talking about should spiritual still be performed? Should they be performed? You ain't got no Black people in your choir. What type of conversations are you having about that gospel piece? Should that gospel piece be performed again if you don't have any Black people in your choir? Is it tokenism? Is it pandering? Or is it celebration? Cultural appropriation? Or, you know what I'm saying? So talk to me. And you and I, we've had plenty of these conversations, but I would love those who might watch this interview to hear from Robert Gibson.
Gotcha. So I think that music, especially if music is published, it is open to anybody to do, right? Let's start there. If you have a piece of music that is published, whether it's a white person or a black person, it's open for anybody. Now, when you talk about black composers, there's not too many of us, you know, and sometimes I feel like people will run to a piece because it is a black composer, and again, they miss the significance of the piece, you know. We've had many discussions in undergrad about the significance of the Requiem by Mozart. We have many discussions about, you know, different pieces, you know, by dead composers. But for some reason, when it comes to something that is like current and right here in our own backyard, we don't really address it. We sing it, but we don't talk about it. And I think that, you know, can you do a spiritual? Yes. And I've heard, I mean, I went to the University of North Texas. That is probably one of the best choirs I have heard sing the Battle of Jericho. Like Dr. McCoy was and he had those basses, and so, I mean, like they were getting it, and they sounded amazing, you know. And so, can white choirs sing spirituals? Yes. Do I think they need to understand the significance of it as well? Yes. I don't think it should just be a good concert closer, but there needs to be an understanding of why. You know, if we're gonna sing, you know, the word was God, which I think is that's Dr. Rosephanie Powell's piece,
right,
which is an amazing piece. Oh my gosh, like she is just phenomenal in so many ways. You know,
she knows how to write rhythmic energy. Like she just gets you hyped.
Right, and not only is she black, but she's a woman. You don't have a lot of black women composers writing brilliant stuff. You know, I mean, she just has brilliant stuff. The Cry of Jeremiah. I mean, like this, you know, wonderful stuff. I think those pieces need to be represented also with conversation. You know, when we talk about, you know, appropriation, and we talk about people, you know, from different cultures doing certain pieces, I think it's important to understand the why. Why am I choosing this piece? What is this piece going to do for my students? You know, especially as we are educators. So as educators, we have to make sure that we are educating our students for a specific reason. So for example, I did a Black History concert with my students, with my middle school students. And we did the spiritual Hush, Somebody's Calling My Name. We did the song Down by the Riverside, you know, it's an arrangement that I had. But we had to talk about, you know, what is the Riverside? What is that? You know, why are they not going to study war no more? Why are we not saying study war no more with an RE? Why is it just MO with apostrophe? What does that mean? You know, because that's going to educate them to understand the significance of pieces, and not just to do them because they sound good and because they're fun, you know? And so, as I said, I think it's important to make sure that pieces are not just good closers, or they're just not good, you know, pieces. You cannot control, especially like in middle school. You know, I can't control if I have Black students or not. If they're here, they're here. They're not, they're not. I do have a responsibility of still making sure that they are culturally understanding of the pieces that I choose, you know? I think that in colleges, you know, you have a little bit more responsibility because you get to recruit students, you know. I still think you should give them an opportunity, as long as it's just not, we're just doing this because it makes us look good, or it makes us check the box, you know. I think box checking can be really dangerous because it says we've done the Black piece good, you know. And that's not something I think that is going to help anything, because it just comes off as we're doing those pieces over there. Now let's do the music, and it takes us out of takes us out of the realness, because gospel music is just as real as Bach is. You know, jazz music is just as important, you know, as a cantata.
Sorry, it just made me think of all the conversations we've had about your jazz battles. Sorry.
Man.
Sorry. That's not for now. It's
all important, and it's all relevant, not just the musical stylistic part of it, but the cultural understanding of it. You know, if you understand what it's from. So, you know, if you understand what it's from, then you have more ownership, and you have a little bit more pride in when you do it. You know?
Right. And my philosophy on this one is twofold. Well, not one philosophy. One of them is a fear. So you're talking about this check the box thinking. So in COVID, right around the same time was the Civil Rights Awakening. that sadly surrounded Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd, right? And then that kind of trickled into the arts about what could the arts do better. I remember ACDA had like, 2 journal publications of just Black composers and things like that, right? I really do wonder, of course, America did the same thing. They just had this big diversity and inclusion type of themed conference. Mm-hmm. I wonder though, when we go back to normal, because that's usually what folks keep saying, I can't wait to get back to normal. What does that look like for diversity and inclusion and all the stuff that we just did the hard work on? Do you think your work is over as a conference or as a community, or is it because it was supposed to be a catalyst to reset? I wonder if many folks are going to see it that way, or are they going to look forward to, like you said, getting back to the real music. We played our part. We programmed a Gibson piece. We programmed a Gibbs piece. We good now. We chilling. Like now we can go back to doing Bach and them only.
Right. I cannot say what they feel, or I cannot say what other people feel. My hope is that we see and we have a respect for all genres. Mm-hmm. I refer to the Aeolians so much, and it's not just because they're all Black choir, but their performance at ACDA a couple of years ago was outstanding. And it wasn't just outstanding because they sang it so well. It was because they, a lot of Black people said, they broke ACDA, and they broke it not just because they sounded good. They broke it because they gave you everything. They gave you this like 20th century, just crazy piece. They gave you Dawson, they gave you jazz, they gave you the Promised Land, Martin Luther King, they gave you Bach. They have sung Bach better than any choir I've heard sing Bach.
That's what's up.
I mean, it was stunning, and I loved how they were able to do it all. And it didn't feel forced. It didn't feel like we're doing real music on this piece, but on this piece, we're just doing the fun stuff. It all felt the exact same, Sometimes you don't get the same realness in all the pieces when you see other choirs, Maybe it's the way that pieces are placed, when you place the fun song at the end of the concert, it comes off as, okay, this is just the fun music, or
I agree.
I remember Dr. Anthony Teresa King. He did the Missouri All-State, I believe, in 2016.
It was either 16 to 17, but
one of those two. And I remember he did his "I'm Building Me a Home" at choir, and I was in tears. And I don't normally cry at stuff like I can clap, I can go yes, but I was in tears because what he did with that choir, in addition to them singing, this is a majority, like 99% white choir,
Facts.
And they were doing choreography or whatever, like as if they were slaves. But this was the first time where I was not like, oh my gosh. It was like you could tell they had conversations. You could feel that they were not trying to be disrespectful, that they were really in the zone, and I told him, this was the first time that when I heard a concert, I didn't see the color at all. I felt your heart. I felt your spirit,
right.
And I would hope that choirs get to a place where if they're going to perform a gospel piece, they talk about the religious content. They talk about the style of it. They talk about why it's important. It is uplifting. It is fun. They talk about all those things,
right.
Just as important when we talk about Bach, we talk about Brahms, and we talk about, because we sometimes give certain things more weight than others,
right.
I think that is why I am such an advocate for all genres have a purpose and a meaning, especially if you're going to program it. Don't just ever program anything because it sounds good or looks good or it's going to fill your program. It needs to be something that's relevant,
Right. I agree. And you know what, that leads me to, if we're being honest, man, there's a few of us that grew up all around fine art music and classical repertoire. But many folks, when we go into music education, we only know what's been presented to us. We only know what's been introduced to us in K through 12 study. And then when we go to college, we only know what they give us when it comes to music history and choral lit, blah, blah, blah. So I think there's a real responsibility for academic institutions to learn more, to teach these styles inside of them, because all the time, when I do a session at a conference, when you do a session at a conference, every seat is full. And it's not just because Robert Gibson's fun and he's intriguing and he's captivating, but it's also, you know what, I kind of don't know how to do this gospel music, or I kind of don't understand the spiritual like I think I should. And had our educational systems been doing more inside the classrooms when they're giving them their certification saying now you are officially ready to go out into the world and teach students how to sing music, well, you kind of ain't, because there's this whole cultural neglect. Like, if it ain't European centrism, you can't teach it. You can't teach jazz, you can't teach gospel, you can't teach Southern gospel, you can't teach anything that makes American music, except that it's in English. Like, that's the only thing you can kick knowledge on. And I think that's a travesty that we need to fix. So I know one of my reasons for going into a doctoral program is that when I go in to get my next college job is to kind of restructure that. And I know you've had that same conversation, but I really do believe that, man. I think we are not doing a good job in the classroom when we're paying these tuition dollars of helping students who will eventually become professionals understand and learn this music. So how do we expect anything to change if you don't actually add a class?
Right. I'm gonna push it a step further. You know, I grew up in Black church. You know,
as did I.
So growing up in Black church, I know Black church very, very well, and I can hear it. You know, so if you hear a musician do a little riff, you're like, okay, you know, because we know that very, very well.
Right.
The thing is, I think the past generations have not grown up in that style. Mm-hmm. They didn't, and because they have not grown up, they are not aware of how to teach it, so they don't. Mm-hmm. You know, exactly. And I think that it is people like us. It's our responsibility. Yes. If I have a gospel choir at my school, then you need to take that choir for at least one semester, 1 year, something to understand it. You know, I have students, I teach the Missouri State Gospel Choir right now, and I have students all the time that message me and say, hey, you know, I'm going to be graduating this semester, but I'd love to be a part. And my response is, you need to be in this group, because when you go out, you know, some of the skills we learn in gospel, like rope teaching, like learning how to teach stuff on the fly, like knowing all the parts. Those are very vital things. And some people can't do that. Some people cannot, like, you know, take a lyric sheet and teach those things. Yeah. And I think that is just as important as being able to pick up a score and, you know, plunk it on the piano.
And even more so, Rob, they can't do it and they think it's less than. It's a skill set, and it's a skill set that you struggle with. And because you struggle with it, it ain't as valid. It ain't as valuable.
Right. I think that people kind of shy away from, you know, I don't hear a lot of choirs doing French songs. French is a really hard language, you know. You don't see a lot of people doing it because it's hard. People need to lean more into the unknown and get help. It's okay for me to call somebody and say, hey, you know what? I don't know how to teach this. Can you help me with this? Yeah. You know, but for some reason, we just don't have people who are willing to say, hey, I need this. Or you try it out and it might not be stylistically correct, you know. And that's also an area where it's like, you need to make sure that a style that you are very familiar with. So for example, South African music, you know, Missouri State Chorale does a lot of South African music. Thankfully, there have been people in the chorale who are from South Africa. And so you have somebody who is going to say, that's not correct. This is how you pronounce this. You know, with the multicultural ensemble, it was all women this year. And we did Ndiko Kelebawo, you know, and two things. One, I called the composer from South Africa and I asked him if I can arrange it, you know, a little bit differently. There was a one of our GAs is from South Africa. And so I brought him in to help me teach the language. You know, I don't know South African music. The harmonies are really easy, but what I don't want to do is I sing it and I mess up the language.
Right.
That doesn't represent the culture. You know? And in so fact, I think
it disrespects it.
Right. And I think people need to be more willing to collaborate. People need to be more willing to say, hey, we're going to do this piece and I'm going to bring this person in who is well versed in it. And I think that's something that just needs to happen across the board, you know, and I think that bridge a lot of things together, you know.
All right. Okay. All right. So I know you got time is limited and I'm on that 40-minute Zoom. So I only got like two more minutes with you. So let's leave it with this. What are you working on now? And what's just one big thing you want the folks to remember if they remember anything about Robert T. Gibson and his philosophy on music. Start with what you're working on now.
Sure. So I'm actually doing a project choir right now. This is how I always workshop my pieces. I get singers, from either some of my students from the college, or I get people like who I know read really well. So I am working on a mass where I premiered this work called Kyrie at the Missouri State Conference back in 2019. And I have a Gloria. I'm still kind of working on the Sanctus and all that stuff that's coming out. I have a new piece that's called Light that I'm working on. I'm workshopping it right now. It's dedicated to there was a suicide that happened in Nixa Junior High. So I'm dedicating that piece.
And Nixa is a suburb outside of Springfield, Missouri.
Right. And so I'm dedicating that piece to the young man who took his life. And really, really, times today are very, very difficult, and people just need light, and people need to speak over themselves in light, I'm also, what is that? Have some other pieces, some little spirituals that I'm working on, some little things. I'm hoping to, continue to expand and have more people do the music that I'm working on. And so once it's out there, you will know it and you will see it.
And put me on. Exactly. We'll definitely look forward to.
You said, what's the one thing I want people to know about Robert Gibson? Anything that I write or anything that I do, I want people to be able to heal from it.
Okay.
I think that healing is a really big thing. And I've said this word many times in the Zoom. Healing is really, really important, and the word light keeps coming up. There's a light of mine, a song called Light, because there's so much darkness, and I'm wanting people to, be exposed to the light, and I think in the light we can really see ourselves, and we can really heal from the things that we struggle with,
Right on. All right, well, that's what's up. That's Robert Gibson, my man, my homie, Black man doing it for himself, and I ain't mad at it. All right, man, thanks for making time, bro.
Of course, man. We'll talk soon, man.
Definitely.